All right, everyone, I'm excited for today's episode. I have on Lauren Kimberly, and she is a part of our amazing community, and she wrote a book that I'm really excited to hear about. It's called The Magical Forest, and it's so funny. Like, I can't wait to hear more about it, but my daughter is in this phase where she wants us to tell her a story before bed every night. And I always tell stories with a magical forest, or like, she'll be like, tell me a story about an owl. And so I'm like, in this magical forest, far, far away. And I'm like, this book is right up our alley. She's going to love it. So I can't wait to hear more about it. And it's always inspiring to hear from mamas who are having visions and then putting them into life. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's so cute about your daughter with the magical forest. My son was in a phase like that about a year ago as well, when at bedtime he would give me kind of the outline of the story and I would have to kind of make it up. And again, same thing, it would always kind of take place in a forest. There would always be some sort of magic.
Right.
And you just kind of go from there. So it's definitely fun to have the book,
Uh-huh.
live and almost in my hands. It's almost here.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, she'll guide me sometimes. So if I'm like, and there was a cow, she's like, no, a horsey. I'm like, there was this big, beautiful brown horse. The horse is black, mama. Okay, this big black, and then I'm
Yeah,
like, okay,
exactly.
close your eyes. Let me finish telling the story. Go to sleep.
She's got a vision, right?
For sure.
She's got a vision. She has the story. She just needs you to help her tell it.
Yeah. But then I'm like, am I telling it or are you telling it? What's going on here?
Right.
You tell
Yeah.
me a story. No,
I
but
tried
it's
that
fun.
too. It doesn't work.
It was like interesting at the beginning though, because like when she started getting into this phase of nighttime routine changing and us telling her stories before bed, I remember even at first being like, man, how do I tell a story? I haven't like
Yeah.
made up and told a story in so long.
Yes.
So at first I even almost felt self-conscious about it, but now there's so many things that happen and I'm not at all like, we just have crazy stories of flying unicorns.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I would get like self-conscious as well. Like if my husband were to walk in or I'm like, can other people hear me like telling this story? Like, but yeah, it's the same thing. You've gone almost your whole life without needing to do that. And then you have these little humans who are looking to you to kind of make up these stories.
Mhm.
And you just kind of start. And the first couple were probably not the best stories I've ever told in my life.
Right.
And then they just evolve and they, sometimes will build upon the story from last night and it continues. So it's really fun to make up these stories.
Hmm.
Kids at that age, honestly, it's the best. Like it's so much fun with their imaginations, how it just explodes and they want more all the time. And you
Hmm.
can tell the story about anything and they just love it. Like
Right.
it's the best.
Right. And I feel like it made me want to use my imagination again and more because I'm like, I want her to learn how to do that and to like
Yeah.
not feel self-conscious about, being artsy and creating
Hmm.
stories and visions and things like that. But I mean, there are times where my stories take wild turns and I'm like, wait, was that like a good, I had these owls once that broke a bunch of animals out of the zoo. And I'm like, wait, am I like encouraging breaking and entering? Like,
Mm,
like what happened? They freed all the animals in
right.
the zoo and then who
You
knows?
say something and immediately you're like, oh, I can't backpedal, so I'm just gonna go with it.
Right, right.
They broke
Yeah,
them out of the zoo, but then they put them back. They don't
right.
hurt. And left a note that said they're sorry.
Right. So yeah, it's fun though. It's been fun. I feel like using my imagination again.
Yeah, it is fun. And kids definitely pull that out of you. Like I was saying before, kids, I mean, you don't really use your imagination the same way. And then they start to grow and they hit that age where they're like, around two probably is when they start with their imaginations. And it kind of just brings you back. It's kind of like watching, your old Disney movies. It's the same type of thing where you just see their imaginations explode when they're watching, Cinderella and turning into like a beautiful princess and the
Right.
carriage. And it's just so much fun.
Yeah. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write this.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So if I kind of back it up a little bit more. So by day I'm an engineer. So I say that because it's very not imaginative. It's very, by the numbers. Um, so it's kind of a specific part of your brain. So having this creative outlet, I find it really balances me out. And I like having the kind of juxtaposition of the two very different things that I do. So it kind of started when the pandemic actually happened. So the pandemic happened, and up in Canada, we had lockdowns upon lockdowns. There was months on end where even the playgrounds down the street were closed. They were wrapped up with tape. You couldn't use them. And I was on mat leave with my second child. So I had my second child with me. I had my first as well. I kept him out of daycare. And we were going stir crazy, to be honest. We had nothing to do. We couldn't see family. We couldn't even go to the park. And we were getting a bit crazy. And one thing I did, one day I kind of packed them up, took them into the forest. We live pretty close to the forest here, and went on a hike. I had both kids. We just went on a hike, just, no destination, no agenda. And we went on a hike, and my kids, they loved it. They lit up. They were so happy to be out in the woods. And, the very next day I did the same thing. And the next day I did the same thing. And it became a daily habit. Sometimes we were hiking, as much as 10 kilometers, which is a fair distance for just me by myself with my two kids.
Yeah.
And on these hikes, my son started to come up with things. He was 3 at the time. So he started to come up with things like, mommy, let's go chase the dragons. Okay, let's go. So, we would grab some sticks and we would just chase the dragons and find the dragons. And the next day we were finding fairies. And the next day we were finding elves. And I started kind of recording on my phone these voice memos of him telling me these stories of what we were chasing and what we were finding. And then I would come home and I would just use Photoshop and like put in some pictures of dragons, next to him on the trail in the forest. And it just blew his mind. Like he couldn't believe there was dragons. And then, I'm like, I'm going to compile all of these and just make it into a book just as like a memento for him. And then I started sharing my story with some friends and family and some coworkers as well. And everyone kept saying, you know what, like that sounds like a great story. We would love to have that story as well for my kids. So that's when I kind of said, maybe can I do this? Like, can I actually turn it into a real book that, people can flip the pages and it can be on their bookshelves in their playrooms? Like, it just seems like such a wild dream. So I started doing my research, looking into what goes into a book. It's way more than I thought, honestly. I hired an editor, so she edited the manuscript for me. Hired a graphic designer. If you didn't know, books need graphic designers, which I did not know. So I hired an amazing graphic designer. And she, helped me with the page layouts. And then I kind of did a funny thing where I taught myself how to illustrate as well. So got on my iPad and spent far too many hours on YouTube learning how to illustrate and did it myself. So I illustrated the book myself. And then it kind of just came together that way. So, it's been about 14 months now since I started the process. So it's pretty long, but with 2 kids and my day job, the only time I really worked on my book was after the kids went to bed. So, between 8 p.m. and 11 p.m., let's say, is when I worked on my book. So just short little bursts here and there, but I got it done. And it was really amazing to kind of finish that last drawing and wrap up the book. So just yesterday, actually, I got my book submitted to Amazon, just waiting for them to review it. And then I'll be setting it live and having it available to anyone who wants to hear the story of the magical forest.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's so much fun. I've also always wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
Not in my season right now, but
Fair.
that's so much fun. Like first of all, I mean, just like I said, the magical forest is like such a cute idea.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. It's I really like that it has such a special meaning for me and my son. Like it's about our stories of what we did every day for the better part of a year. That's, how long we did our hikes for, is just about a year. And it's nice for him to kind of have that and go back to it and remember, oh yeah, we chased dragons and fairies. And then it's also good for other kids because it's the imagination. And I guess the third layer is it's promoting the outdoors, which we're really into the outdoors. So, it's getting kids outside, it's getting them used to expanding their imaginations, it's bonding with their families, as they snuggle up in bed and read it. So I'm really excited to share it. And I hope that other people find just as much joy when they read it as we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so much fun. Is your son's name Charlie?
It is, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, because that's the boy's name in the book.
It is, yeah. I figured it would be best to keep it the same so that, it's him. I even drew even the mom in the book is like, looks pretty similar to me with the bangs and the glasses. So
yeah.
it was fun. I mean, my 2-year-old looks at the book cover and she's like, that's mommy.
Yeah.
So it's cute.
That is cute. Oh, that's so much fun. And then what is the exact day that it comes out?
Yeah, so it's gonna go live on Amazon for people to purchase on March 23rd. So it is
23rd.
coming up quickly.
Yeah, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
So do you see yourself like writing more children's books? Did it like become something that you're like, oh my gosh, this is something I would love to do more of?
Yeah, it's funny you ask. So I am currently doing my second book. So while I was drawing the first one, I wrote my second book, which is more of a dedication for my daughter. Um, and now that that's all done, my editor is finished with it. And now I'm working through the illustrations on the second book. And it's definitely something I'm going to continue. It was just so much fun to create these stories. And also the community that I've kind of found in this process is really supportive. It's really great to see other authors. It's not often that you find a community where everyone is so supportive, because sometimes there are industries where somebody only needs one kind of supplier, whereas an author, a family could own multiple books, so you're not you're not competing with your fellow authors, you're working together. So you want them to succeed, you want yourself to succeed, and vice versa. So it's really nice meeting all of these people, especially people local. They're right here in my city. I would have never met them had I not got into this. So now I've met a whole bunch of them. We're planning some events coming up locally, like some book signings or some little like book parties that we have in the works. So it's really exciting to kind of meet this whole other group of people that I would have never met before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so much fun. And I feel like you bring up such a good point as far as like competing, because I find that like you said, kind of in a lot of different industries, but a lot of people might feel that as well, like inferior of like, oh, well, there's so many mommy podcasts out there. Why would I start one? But it's like, there's room for everybody at the table. Like, not everybody's going to get everything they need from this podcast. I listen to like so many other mom podcasts, and I like refer people. I'll be like, oh my gosh, have you listened to this one? Or I've mentioned a lot on here, especially like for birth. I'm like, you should listen to evidence-based birth podcasts. They have tons of resource, referring people out, because it's like, I don't offer everything to everyone. And so you have to kind of consume from different resources, and there is room. Like, what if you're bringing something to the table that's not here yet? Or maybe you're bringing it in a way that somebody else is going to receive it, that they haven't received from somebody else. So I think that that's something that stops a lot of people from doing what they love. Like even writing a children's book, like, oh, but there's already a book about this type of thing out there, or whatever it is. It's like, of course, there's millions, billions of children's books, but you have a story, you have the message that you want to send out, and nobody's told it the way that you have. So do it.
Exactly. And a lot of it, it's the words that you use, and it's kind of the feeling, it's your characters, it's the pictures too, right? It's all unique. And just because someone may have another book that possibly has magic in a forest doesn't mean that mine also can't exist in the same world.
Right, exactly. That's so fun. So for anybody listening who would like to order your book, where can they do that at? And also any extra resources or anything like that that you would like to leave us with?
Sure, yeah. So my book will be available on Amazon. Again, like I said, March 23rd, it should go live. And you can just search The Magical Forest. It should pop up. And then in terms of other resources, so I have my editor, my graphic designer, but the biggest resource that I found for writing a children's book, if someone does want to get into it, yourself included, you said it is a goal, would just honestly be some Facebook groups and get yourself involved. And what I did was found some groups that had not only a lot of members, because that's not always a good indication of, a positive active group, but how many posts they're doing and the content that they are posting about. So spend some time looking up different Facebook groups. You might even be able to find some locally that have local authors or illustrators in it. And then just spend some time going through the posts, seeing what kind of stuff they're posting. If it's posting valuable information that would help you on your journey, then join it and start asking your questions, and start also giving back. I find is a really good thing to do instead of just taking. Instead of always being the one to ask the questions and take advice, try to give it back too. So an example, and I have a Facebook group I'm part of that critiques children's book covers specifically. So yes, you can post your cover and you'll get feedback for sure, but don't forget to give the feedback as well, because other people want to learn as well. So it's always good to give as much as you take, or maybe even give more than you take.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I feel like it is easy to like pop in and like be like, hey, what do you think about this? And then
But you want to
not be
build
as
that
part.
community.
Like you want to, well, maybe you don't want to, but what I wanted to do was build a community and make good connections with people. So you don't always want to take, you want to provide your advice as well. It's helped me honestly create some really strong connections that, again, like I said, I wouldn't have made them if I had never tried. And
Yeah.
people kind of look at Facebook groups and some may roll their eyes, but Facebook groups have a wealth of information. And despite, I'm not saying go on Facebook and update your status every day, right? The groups really are useful. It's a great way to connect people from all across the world. And you go in a Facebook group, you can search pretty much any topic and you'll find, 100 groups that have discussions on that exact topic that you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Well, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and for sharing the information about your book and your story. And I'm really excited for it to come out. Like I said, I'm definitely going to get a copy for Jovi because all of our stories are like a magical forest or an enchanted forest or anything like that. Yeah. And they're always, yeah, she's just really into that. Like she'll even start the beginning. She'll be like, in a magical forest far, far away. Because that's like how we start like every single story.
You should record that on
Your phone to keep.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I will.
Yeah. That's so cute.
Bunch of random stories, but but it's fun. So yeah, that's not a bad idea. All right. Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on. I will leave all the links in the show notes where people can find your book, connect, get it, and all of that. So I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.